So I've been wanting to make this video for a while now, and I figured now that I'm about to do this 30 or so minute drive back home, I figured now would be a great time to bust it out. So I'm gonna share with you all my top 6 vintage clothing predictions for 2026. So I picked up a good few amount of pieces that I'm very happy with, some jeans, some knits, a couple sweats and tees, good stuff just for right now as it's starting to get colder here in upstate New York. And then I grabbed 4 mystery bags, 4 like large garbage mystery bags I'm excited to dig through. So I'll probably put that in our next like weekly vlog video. But for anyone that's new here, my name is Hudson. I'm the owner of EvergreenIthaca, a vintage clothing store based out of Ithaca, New York. And we are weeks away from having our 3-year anniversary. Every year we've been able to progress, have more success, and we are just in a really great position right now in an economy where a lot of people are struggling to keep their businesses afloat. A lot of people are penny pinching, but we've been able to still grow and still reach new milestones. And I feel like that's only been able to happen because we keep a very, very close eye on trends, things we see having more popularity, less popularity, different demographics and what they want to buy. So I'm going to share with you my first prediction for 2026, and that is overall vintage clothing prices will continue to come down a little bit more. So if you were buying or selling vintage clothes in 2021, 2022, you could put anything and everything online and it would sell, and it would probably sell fast, and it'd probably sell for a really good price. Within the past year or two, prices have definitely started to come down a bit, and the more run-of-the-mill stuff like, you know, college crew necks, certain sports team apparel, like that stuff used to go for crazy numbers. Like if you had a vintage starter jacket that was in good condition, it would not be a surprise to sell it for 100, 150 bucks, 200 depending on what kind it was, what team it was. But now I see a lot of those types of jackets going for 50, 60, 70 bucks or so at vintage markets or online. So these more common pieces you come across will continue to trickle down a little bit, I feel like. But with that being said, on the opposite end of that spectrum, the rare stuff, the crazy band tees, the 1930s workwear, and all of those pieces that are much harder to come by, those I can see holding their value and or continue to trickling up in value as people that resonated with those band tees, people that really care about vintage fashion, like the true vintage fashion, wanting to get their hands on a piece of Americana, a piece of, you know, the clothing history, they'll probably continue to pay up for what it is because it's just, you're not gonna find it again. It's so hard to come by that kind of stuff. So the lower end and the mid pieces, I think will kind of come down a little bit more, whereas those high end pieces will still hold their value just fine. Now, prediction number 2 is that vintage markets are going to continue to boom. We live in a relatively rural area. Our county is only 100,000 people. You know, we are in between Syracuse and Rochester and Binghamton, these slightly larger areas, these more densely populated areas. But all of these major areas are having plenty of vintage markets on a regular basis, and it's only going to continue to become more popular in my mind because 1, people want to shop sustainably. 2, people want unique things. Like, who goes to the mall anymore and buys stuff? You might buy an article of clothing online from a, you know, large brand name, but in general, you're gonna want to get something that like speaks to you and that you can wear and that no one else is probably gonna have, you know, in your city. And also, people just want to go and do stuff. Like, in this time where it's like there's so much slop on the internet and social media is just like so like soul sucking, people want to get outside, touch grass, go and meet people, talk to people, show off the outfits that they're wearing. So I see vintage markets only continue to grow in popularity. You don't need to have huge markets. From what I've heard from a lot of vintage vendors, with us hosting our own markets and just from my experience doing markets of all different types of sizes as well, is I don't really care to do a super huge market. Now, if it is a market that is like super well known and people like travel from other states to come to it, I could see the reason to have 100+ vendors at that market. But I've seen tons of markets crush with just 20 vendors, 10 vendors, 5 vendors, really, you know, depending on the location, depending on the time, depending on who is there vending and the quality of the stuff that they have. So in my mind, vintage markets are only going to become more and more popular. Now, with that, doesn't mean just like anyone can just have a vintage market and it will crush. I think you need to make sure you have a good vendor list, you have a good atmosphere and a cool location. And if you do all those things, those markets will continue to have success. Now, prediction number 3, which is already happening now, but I think will only continue to grow exponentially, is these large legacy brands starting to bring in and sell their own vintage clothing. We see it with Carhartt, we see it with Levi's, we see it with Patagonia. I saw another brand, Duckhead, I think, was a brand that's smaller and a little less well known, I feel like, than a lot of the other brands. I think I just saw them the other day saying they're gonna sell some of their vintage stuff. Ralph Lauren does it, and they make dumb money off of their vintage archive stuff. If you're a brand that does millions and millions of dollars and you've been around for decades, it only makes sense to reach out to your customer base. They send out probably email letters to them saying, if you have old stuff, mail it in, drop it off at a location, and you can get cash or credit for newer items. So I only see that continue to be more popular. Now, I don't know what that's gonna mean for the people that go hunting at garage sales and thrift stores. If I'm a 70-year-old person and I have a closet full of this certain brand and I check my emails and they say they'll give me cash for it, they'll take it back for newer items, they'll go, oh yeah, sure, I'll bring it in and I'll get something cleaner and more, you know, modern and up to date. It's funny, that reminds me of just the other day, there was this older gentleman, probably in his late 60s, 70s. He's come in a couple times. I think he's bought a pair of pants off us before, but he came in wearing this thrashed Carhartt vest, like not totally like hanging by a string, but pretty close. And I was like, okay, I have to tell this guy that if he has old Carhartt stuff he's looking to get rid of, to bring it to us and we'll give him money for it. And I did. And when I did, he's like, oh, no, it's really bad. You're not gonna want it. And I was like, no, we will take it. The more beat up it is, the better. And he was like it was not like computing with him, and he was just like, whatever. And I'm sure he might not bring us anything, but I could see a lot of the older crowd that do have closets full of stuff just bringing it to the big brands they got it from originally. So yeah, I wonder how it's gonna do with the vintage clothing circulation. Now, prediction number 4, which I believe is probably one that you maybe have not considered or not heard of from somebody else, and that is large scale trends will no longer exist. And what I mean by that is being a vintage clothing store owner, being someone that hosts vintage markets with a bunch of other vendors that have other products, and I see what sells, what vendors that carry certain type of items do well versus what might not do as well. And right now, the peak trend is Y2K. Jankos, flare jeans, crop shirts, like crazy, like retro skater graphics and things like that. Like that is super hot right now, and that is like the pinnacle of what like the main demographic of people that are buying vintage clothes want right now. And when I say the main demographic, I'm talking about people between the ages of 16 to 25. I think that is the peak of people that are buying vintage clothing right now. Not to say there's not people buying vintage clothes that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on. Not to say that vintage stores that only carry like 50s and olders aren't also probably crushing it as well. But just from what I've seen, the main people that are going to these markets skew younger, Gen Z, and they are wanting that Y2K aesthetic. And my reasoning or my thought behind why that's the case is because they probably grew up looking at that stuff, or their older siblings were wearing those things, so they have a relative amount of nostalgia for it. Whereas once Gen Alpha, these 10-year-olds, these 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds right now are growing up, they're gonna grow up just knowing vintage, just knowing secondhand, just knowing going to vintage markets, seeing this wide array of clothing. So they're not gonna have quite the nostalgia and want to lean back into a certain era of clothing as a mass. So you as an individual might be like, yeah, I love the 70s, I'm gonna wear 70s stuff. But then someone the same age might want 40 stuff. Someone might want the Y2K. Someone might just wear anything and everything and mix match all kinds of stuff. So I could see a global trend or a countrywide trend of certain types of eras or aesthetics kind of dying out, as you can just get any aesthetic at any time from anywhere. Now, another prediction that I don't think will sound shocking when I say it, but you guys will probably agree pretty heavily, is that reworked stuff is going to continue to crush and become part of the new grails. So a Nirvana heart-shaped box t-shirt is probably a grail for a lot of people. It's a crazy expensive t-shirt, super, super rare, and is very eye-catching, very noticeable when you do see it. But I feel like when you go to a lot of these vintage markets, it's just another t-shirt. Like, it's literally just a t-shirt, whereas people that are making and designing and wearing these like totally deconstructed, repurposed workwear jackets, or like adding crazy amount of detailing and patchwork and cut and sew to jeans, like those are cool, and that is truly a one-of-one piece. Like, it's not just like, oh, they have a sick fade, that's probably really uncommon, or the way the wear is at the bottom of the hem is really nice and really unique. It's someone can make something and have it be totally one of one, and I see it more and more, these people that are doing these reworked pieces, not just like, oh, you slap a patch on the back, or you cut the logo out of a t-shirt and throw it on the back of a pair of pants or jeans or a jacket or whatever. It's people that are like able to spend 10, 15, 20 plus hours on one single item, and they sell it for $300, $500, $1,000 depending on the location they're selling it to and the clientele. I see that being the new grail, and that being the new peak, like, desirable thing that anyone can kind of get behind. Now, I'm not saying everyone's gonna wear crazy patchwork, cut and sew piece, but I could see it being more desirable to the average person versus a Nirvana heart-shaped box t-shirt. Let me know your thoughts on that one specifically. That is something that I very strongly stand behind, and it's something that makes me wish I could be good at using a sewing machine. My mother-in-law has one. I've tried to get it going, and it just leaves me super frustrated. I need to go to like a sewing class, something like that. But yeah, I think that is going to be a huge, huge wave in 2026 and onward. Now, my sixth and final prediction for 2026 is that all vintage clothing stores are only going to become more and more specifically curated to their own taste. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of vintage stores, from what I see across social media, and I'm not saying this is all by any means, but I would say more than not, they'll have racks and racks and racks of vintage t-shirts, vintage crew necks, of all kinds of different jeans and pants, and it's just a hodgepodge of different stuff. It's all kinds of different sports teams, all kinds of different colleges, all kinds of just random graphics or different pieces that are vintage, but there's no like cohesiveness to what their specific taste is. It's just like, oh, this is a 90s t-shirt, this is a retro crew neck, this is a distressed pair of jeans. We'll carry it because they like it enough. But I think there's going to be a trend where a more specific curated store is going to be the wave, and is going to cause you to have an even stronger client base. And if someone does come into your store and your store is super niche down and they like what they see and they buy something, they're more likely to come back because they like your specific taste. It's not just like, oh, it's a vintage store, let me go check their 100 feet of racks and look at every single piece. Okay, yeah, I'll grab this t-shirt, it's a cool t-shirt. It's they want to go and know that I like your taste, I like your style, and I know that any t-shirt I grab off this rack, I'm gonna fall in love with. So I see more of that being the next wave. And to give some stores some shout outs, there's Save the Rags in Rochester, New York, I believe. And they have they carry I believe 50s and older, and just their stuff is absolutely gorgeous and stunning. And if you're someone that really cares about that true vintage, that cares about the intricate details, the wear, the history of those pieces, you will love everything in their store. There's Queen City Vintage out of Buffalo, where they are the Buffalo Bills mecca. There, if you want vintage Buffalo Bills gear, you go nowhere else because they have it all. And when they do have it all, they're able to ask more of a premium price because of that. Same with Save the Rags. They're not just throwing up anything and everything. The fact that they have this more niche, more hard to come by, more selective selection of pieces, that means they're able to find people that appreciate that stuff and able to ask slightly more for those items. So I see that being the next big thing. It's not just oh, we have a bunch of old stuff, come check it out. It's oh, we have a bunch of X items or a bunch of Y styles. So those are my 6 predictions for 2026. Let me know what you think. If you have any predictions, let me know in the comments. If you think any of my predictions are absolutely wild and I'm tripping, also let me know. Thanks for watching. If you like weekly behind the scene videos of running a vintage store, subscribe, and catch y'all later.